Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z Flashback, a series of explorations of the 150 games that make up Atari Flashback Classics for Nintendo Switch. Today's game is Countermeasure, which was a 1983 release for the Atari 5200, and this is one of the few genuine exclusives for the system. It was never ported to either 2600 or Atari 8-bit, and part of the reason for that was it made extensive use of the Atari 5200's unusual controller. Not so much the keypad side of things, but the fact it had two fire buttons was important. So one of the fire buttons was used for shooting, and the other one you could hold down to actually rotate your tank's turret independently of the tank's body, which is one of the most interesting things about the game. So Countermeasure was developed to address the fact that at launch the Atari 5200 didn't really have a good war-themed game. And Atari was very much aware of the fact that war-themed games sold very well. So there was things like Cold War paranoia and stuff going on, but then there was also the success of the original pack-in game for the Atari 2600 Combat. And so they really needed a sort of successor for the 5200 to match Combat's popularity. And they originally planned a game called Tank to come out with the launch of the 5200. That never actually happened, and Countermeasure is a separate thing, but it's probably the closest we're going to get at this point. So, Countermeasure is very much one of those games that sort of addresses Cold War paranoia directly. It's all about sort of preventing nuclear strikes and missile attacks and that sort of thing. And yeah, it's got a very tense atmosphere about it. It's quite an interesting game. Unfortunately, the Atari 52 emulation on the Atari Flashback Classics package does a few funny things with the sound here and there, so you don't quite get the full effect in a few places, but you'll get the general idea. Anyway, let's go play Countermeasure.
Okay, here we are once again with Atari Flashback Classics, and today we're looking at Countermeasure for the Atari 5200. So, let's have a look at the manual. So, Atari 5200, most games had this sort of lovely sort of silver and rainbow effect going on. They actually used this for the Atari 2600 games of the same period as well, and I think the Atari 7800 used a very similar aesthetic as well. It was Atari's look and feel for a while, and I've always been very fond of that kind of look. Alright. Condition red. Attention all super tank units. We've received word that terrorists have seized one of our missile silo complexes and are threatening to blow up Washington DC. Oh no. These lunatics aren't fooling. They've wired the missiles to a silo computer and started the launch sequence timer. In just 10 minutes the missiles will lift off for Washington unless you stop them. Destroy all the silos in the complex with your long-range turret gun before the timer runs out. If you complete this mission, you'll win the Congressional Medal of Honor, along with 10,000 points and a bonus life. It's very generous. If the time runs out before you destroy all the silos, you still have a chance to prevent disaster. In the seconds before impact, dock your supertank at a silo, enter the war room, and guess the fail-safe code that disarms the missiles. The code is some combination of the letters L, E, and O. For example, ELL, OOO, or OLE. Succeed, and you win 10,000 points and a bonus life. Fail, and well, you'll find out. Okay, so this is a game where you drive a tank, a super tank, because the Atari 5200 was the super system, so everything on it had to be super. You drive it around the landscape looking for missile silos, which you can destroy, and looking for places to refuel, and trying not to get shot. So it's in theory, it's a fairly straightforward game, but there's some interesting little bits and pieces here, mostly to do with like guessing that code. So if you go to refuel, then you'll get a clue for the fail-safe code for that level, which is one of the letters and the position it goes in. So if you can get at least a couple of clues, you can finish the level quite quickly by just going along and guessing the code. Yeah. So, the controls for this, fairly straightforward. The Atari 5200 controllers, if you've not come across them before, they had an analog joystick, they had two fire buttons, and then they had this sort of telephone-style keypad down at the bottom. And the keypad in this one allowed you to enter in the code, choose 1 or 2 play mode, to use auto tank or stop tank, which is when you're rotating your tank's turret, whether or not the tank keeps moving, and adjusting the skill level. Now, obviously, when you're playing on Nintendo Switch, you're using a Nintendo Switch controller. So you have to sort of remap those controls. So let's do just that right now. Let's have a look at the controls. So at the moment we have fire on the A button, turn gun on the R button. So we press the shoulder button and hold it down to change the direction that we're moving things around. And then we've got the failsafe codes assigned to left shoulder button, left trigger and right trigger. So using combinations of those you can type L, E or O. And that's about it. So let's have a go. Let me reset this first. Reset. So we can admire the lovely 5200 intro screen. And here we are. This is what Countermeasure looks like. Let's begin. Right. So you control your super tank like this. You can hold down the R button to change the direction your turret is pointing. You can actually fire further diagonally than you can in a straight direction, so it's almost worth trying to shoot things diagonally as much as possible. And you'll see you slow to an absolute crawl if you enter any sort of terrain other than open terrain. Here's the fuel depot. So we know that the last letter of the code now is L. And you see that the enemy turrets there, they only fire when they're facing you. So with a bit of careful timing, you can set yourself up to avoid their shots and be able to shoot them before they can reach you. But like I say, you are very limited. That's one silo down. So then we can proceed on our way. Try and getting into open ground as much as possible. And yes, you can destroy the refueling dumps as well. So you need to be very careful not to do that. So if we go and refuel here, we now know that the first letter is E and the last letter is L. So we can actually go straight to one of these silos and figure this out for ourselves. So you just move up to a silo like this, and then you've got, I think it's about 10 seconds to figure it out while this terrifying noise goes on in the background. So we know that the first one is E. E-O-L. There we are. Done it. Beautiful. I'm sure you'll agree. Now, the music in this game doesn't sound quite right. There's one unfortunate part of the Atari Flashback Classics collection is that for whatever reason, the Atari 5200 emulation in here, the sound emulation isn't quite right. So it mostly sounds alright, but anytime you have like music like that, so last letter is L on this one, anytime you have music, it sounds a bit discordant and out of tune. So that's a bit of a shame. But not the end of the world. Given that very few Atari 5200 games were known for their stirring soundtracks. Now, as you continue to progress through... Oops! As I was saying, as you continue to progress through this game, you'll start to encounter different types of enemies. So, besides the turrets that we've got here, you'll also encounter cruise missiles. And I think there's tanks and jeeps that you can find as well. Alright, let's go get the code from here. So second letter is O, last letter is L. Let's go see if we can work this one out. Alright, L-O-L. E-O-L. There we are. I think it was the same as last time, wasn't it? The world is safe once again. Until the next level. Which is now sort of nightimey. Which is kind of cool. So yeah, you see that the levels are sort of starting to get a bit more complicated now as well. The last letter is L again. Oh! Death. Yeah, you really can shoot a lot further diagonally than you can sideways or up and down. So it's very much worth firing at things diagonally as much as you can to try and keep out of range. But equally, the enemy turrets also have a much longer range when they're shooting diagonally as well. Alright, what do we got here? E something L. I reckon we can probably figure that out. So let's just make our way to the next silo. Ooh! Long range shot. We dead? One more life. Oh no! It's all over. Right, let's have another go at that. I do quite like this game. It's got its weird little quirks. But once you get your head around the control system and what you're actually supposed to do, it's actually pretty fun. And like I say, if nothing else, it's interesting to play one of the few genuine exclusives for the Atari 5200 that you couldn't play anywhere else. Like, this didn't even get an Atari 8-bit version. L is the first letter. And what is the next letter, if you please? L is also the second letter. LL something. That's telling us something we already know. I'm not sure if you can actually get the whole code from those clues. I guess you can. But I think it's also determined randomly which letter it gives you, so... it's plausible you'll find yourself in a situation where you have to guess 2 letters instead of 1. Right, so LL something. LLL. LLE. LLE. That's correct. Alright, next. Oops. That was unfortunate. I think I might have destroyed the resupply base as well. Yeah, I think one area where people struggle with this game a bit is the terrain aspect of it. Because it really does have a massive impact on how fast your tank can move. E is the first letter, and now I am dead. No! Oh dear. Right. Okay. I think just before we finish that, I'll just show you what happens if you fail to guess the code correctly. So we'll start as normal. We'll get O. Give myself a fighting chance. These levels are randomised, aren't they? That's quite neat. Alright. So let's fail to guess a code. Or maybe fail to guess a code anyway. I was going to keep typing, ooh, and you'll hear you have this terrifying noise in your ears all the time you're doing this, frantically scrabbling for the right combination of letters. And then, kaboom! That very unpleasant death scene there. And then you just pick up as if nothing happened after that. Actually, it takes you to the next level, doesn't it? Yeah, if you look at the colour scheme, this is the level 2 colour scheme. So it's as if you've just gone, oh, well, okay, we failed to save Washington, but let's carry on. It'll be fine. We didn't need Washington anyway. Also, who cares about Washington? I'm British. Not that I would care about London if it was London, either. Get out the trees. Some super tank you are. Let's see if we can finish the level by destroying all the silos. I don't think I've ever actually done that. So if you want to do that, you have to make sure that you manage your fuel level very carefully. And and probably you need to try and take... Edit. Oh, what the hell was that? I don't know, but it was scary. Oh, it's another tank. Whoops. So yeah, you can fight your way through like this if you prefer to, but it's a much quicker route to a high score if you can decipher the codes every time. But it's a matter of preference, and it's nice to have the choice. It's also nice that one option isn't necessarily better than the other either. So you get the same amount of points regardless of whether you guess the code or if you destroy all the silos, which is quite neat. So you really can kind of play this the way you want it to, as long as it involves stopping Washington getting destroyed by nuclear missiles. Anyway, I think that's probably enough countermeasure for now. It's quite a fun game. It is certainly an interesting one from a historical perspective, because it's not a game I hear talked about all that much. Probably because very few people talk about the Atari 5200 generally. But as I say, this is one of the few genuine exclusives for the system, which makes it noteworthy. Because this is not a game you could play anywhere else. Whether you would want to play this anywhere else is a matter of opinion, of course. I kind of like it. It's got its limitations and it's got its annoyances, but overall, it's pretty fun. Pretty fun. Alright, so that was Countermeasure. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Start. Excuse me.